Hello and thank you for tuning in. You're about to hear a chapter from the Hidden Reich, a book that exposes how the Nazi regime did not end in 1945. It transformed, adapted, and continued to govern through new institutions under new names with the help of Eastern allies. My name is Dr. Bodo Schiffmann. I'm a physician, researcher, and truth teller forced into exile for challenging official narratives in medicine, media, and modern history. This work is not speculation. It is based on public records, declassified documents, and undeniable patterns. The very same Nazi officials and ideologies who shaped Hitler's Reich were later integrated into the foundation of the European Union, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the post-war German state. They were protected, rebranded, and often promoted by Western intelligence agencies, corporate interests, and political leaders more afraid of communism than of fascism. The Hidden Reich is not just about history, it's about the system we still live under. A managed democracy where power is hidden, truth is suppressed, and real sovereignty has been replaced by global technocracy. You can get the full book, the full English book, at bodo-buch.de. Now, let us begin the chapter. Chapter 14, Deep State Under Construction. Best, Gehlen, Dickopf und the Legacy of Dictatorship. The invisible infrastructure of power. The denazification of German society after the war was superficial, selective, and strategically controlled, while guilt was publicly negotiated and symbolically attended for. Behind the scenes, a functioning state was reconstructed based on old elites. The executive, in particular the police, secret services, and international networks, was not gutted but restructured with personnel from the Third Reich. Three key figures exemplify this process: Werner Best, Reinhard Gehlen, and Paul Dickopf. They combined authoritarian efficiency with strategic thinking, had excellent networks, and formed the DNA of the security architecture of the early Federal Republic. Werner Best, the administrative thinker of the dictatorship, NS role, administrative lawyer and power technician. Werner Best was one of the ideological architects of the National Socialist administrative state. As a close associate of Reinhard Heydrich in the RSHA, so Reichssicherheitshauptquartier, headquarter of the Reich Security, he devised systematic repression, coordinated Gestapo activities, and later became Reich plenipotentiary in Denmark. He was not only a perpetrator but also a theorist. His legal writings justified preventive repression, animal criminal law, and the maintenance of national order. So maybe somebody of you is also thinking of preventive repression, which is also something which is very known today. Post-war career, the strategy consultant in the background. Interned and death sentence in Denmark after 1945 and pardoned in 1951, Best soon re-emerged in Germany as a right-wing conservative consultant and essayist. He cultivated contacts with ex-Nazis, the CDU-affiliated administration and security circles, and conceptually shaped thinking about defensive democracy and national sovereignty, always from the perspective of authoritarian reasons of state. Significance, Best was never publicly visible but was the intellectual godfather of the authoritarian understanding of administration that characterized many Federal Republic of Germany structures until the 1970s. Reinhard Gehlen, the spy prince of the young republic, and his role head of the Foreign Armies East. As a Major General, Gehlen was responsible for espionage against the Soviet Union in the General Staff. He worked closely with the Wehrmacht leadership, the security service and the Nazi leadership. His network included numerous informants, archives and operational structures, all of which were valuable to the Allies after 1945. Resurgence from war loser to head of the BND. In 1946, Gehlen offered his service to the United States, including archival material, lists of informants, and operational knowledge about the Soviet Union. The organization Gehlen was financed by the CIA and transferred to the Federal Intelligence Service, BND, in 1956 with Gehlen as president. He deliberately took in former Wehrmacht and SS officers, built up an autonomous secret service system, and created one of the most non-transparent institutions of the post-war period with hardly any parliamentary control. Significance: Gehlen was the personified embodiment of continuity between Nazi espionage and West Germany intelligence policy embedded in transatlantic interests. Paul Dickopf, the Gestapo cadre as architect of the West German policy force, and his role from medical student to SD man. Paul Dickopf joined the SS, membership number 337259, and the NSDAP as early as 1939. He completed his training at the Führerschule der Sicherheitspolizei in Berlin-Charlottenburg, a training center for Gestapo and SD leaders. There, he was trained in ideological leadership, interrogation techniques, counterinsurgencies, and national criminal prosecution. From 1941, he worked directly for the security service of the Reichsführer as SSD, one of the central organizations for political surveillance, persecution of Jews and internment. After the war, Dickopf concealed his SD activities, declared himself an insignificant Wehrmacht soldier, and was never legally prosecuted due to the gaps in his denazification. Post-war career, you won't believe it. Re-entry through camouflage and networks. After the end of the war, Dickopf continued his studies, earning a doctorate in law, and established close contacts with Western intelligence services, particularly the CIA and the West German intelligence services Organisation Gehlen. In 1959, under Adenauer's chancellorship, he was brought into the Federal Criminal Police Office, BKA. His rapid rise culminated in his appointment as president of the BKA in 1965, although evidence of his SS and SD past has long been available. These were systematically ignored. In 2007, the BKA published its study, The BKA and its Founding Generations, which confirms this. More than half of the BKA executives under Dickopf were former members of the SS, SD or Gestapo. The BKA is the highest police in Germany. Renazification of the police. Dickopf specifically thought on reactivate old comrades. He created rope terms of trusted forces that supported each other. He formed a police force with an anti-communist authoritarian character similar in structure and mentally to the Gestapo. Under his leadership, there was no systematic punishment for police violence, but there was extensive surveillance of groups allegedly critical of the state. The BKA was under Dickopf insulated mainly from parliamentary scrutiny, structural and personally interspersed with NS continuities, ideologically focused on internal security and defense against the enemy instead of civil rights. Dickopf as president of Interpol, a global network under brown hands. In 1968, Dickopf became president of Interpol at the suggestion of Western services. He advocated a purely criminal police orientation, but in reality, he utilized the network on the networking of Western secret services to monitor political opposition at home and abroad, to establish an internationally cooperating surveillance regime. Interpol itself was not established until well into the 1970s. As early as 1946, former members of the SS and Gestapo took on leadership roles again, particularly in Austria, France, and Germany. The result? Under Dickopf, Interpol was a transnational coordination center for authoritarian security strategies without public control, without parliamentary oversight, in the name of international security. Aftermath and revelations. It was not until 2001 that it became public that Dickopf was registered as a CIA informant, deliberately covered up Nazi biographies and opposition figures in Germany, including journalists and student leaders. The revelations never led to legal proceedings. Dickopf died in 1973 without any consequences, having been a highly respected civil servant and international security strategist. Meaning in the system context, Paul Dickopf stands for the perfect camouflage of ideological continuity under a democratic surface, the establishment of authoritarian institutions with Nazi continuity in terms of personnel, the dovetailing of national repression with international networks, Interpol, BKA, and CIA, and the systematic blocking of genuine democratization of the police in the Federal Republic of Germany. His impact dates back to the 1980s, as his rogue teams had a lasting influence on the police, the Office for the Protection of the Constitution, and international cooperation. A critical examination of recent developments reveals that his work remains influential today. Significance: Dickopf introduced the brown police tradition into international security policy, and Western allies subsequently covered it up. A structural relapse with a global network. These three people show that it was not a matter of individual cases or career leftovers, but a conceptual project that was systematic. Reactivated old networks, relied on authoritarian logic, international backing, especially the USA, and centers of power outside democratic control. In their combined roles, administration, Best, Secret Service, Gehlen, and police, Dickopf, they formed a functioning authoritarian substructure that operated in the shadow of democracy. Conclusion of chapter 14. Authoritarian continuity under a democratic surface. The post-war history of the Federal Republic of Germany presents a paradoxical picture. Democratic on the outside, yet controlled on the inside, with structures that were not designed for openness and participation, but for efficiency, loyalty, and fighting the enemy. The careers of Werner Best, Reinhard Gehlen, and especially Paul Dickopf shows that these were not merely personal legacies, but a deliberately reactivated authoritarian power apparatus. These men formed three supporting pillars of an authoritarian deep state in the early Federal Republic of Germany. Administration: Werner Best, Nazi role, lawyer, senior SS functionary, administrator of the occupied territories, theoretarian of the authoritarian Führer state, post-war advisor, lobbyist, large escaped prosecution. Secret Service Reinhard Gehlen, Nazi role, Major General, head of foreign armies east in the Wehrmacht High Command, and post-war founder of the Organisation Gehlen, first president of the BND from 1956, and took over numerous ex-NS functionaries into the new Foreign Intelligence Service. Police and Interpol, Paul Dickopf, Nazi role, SS member, contact with the Gestapo. After the war, president of the Federal Criminal Police Office from 1965 till 71 and president of Interpol. Systematically promotes the reintegration of former Nazi police officer into the BKA, and 1968 president of Interpol, protecting international Nazi refugees. He is the one who protected the ones who have flown over the red lines and other things into foreign countries. Systematic characteristics of the deep state: information monopolies, control over files, opponents and networks without publicity, personal policy according to attitude, loyalty more important than compliance with the law, uncontrolled institutions. BND, BKA and Interpol operated beyond democratic accountability. Enemy logic, the enemy within, became the main category. Anti-communist replaced civil rights. Internationally networked repression. Cooperation with the CIA, NATO and Interpol served not only to ensure security but also to stabilize authoritarian structures under Western cover. Continuities until today. The BND was only gradually denazified and reformed from the 2000s onwards. To this day, the BKA acts with operational independence, which repeatedly undermines democratic control, for example in domestic operations and international cooperation. Up to this day, Interpol remains a largely unregulated organization with extensive access rights whose historical role has never been thoroughly investigated. The authoritarian crisis management in the corona pandemic policy from 2020 by the BKA-BND Ministry of the Interior and international bodies shows how old control patterns have been reactivated under new auspices. Information control, states of emergency, elimination of criticism, technocratically legitimized but hardly democratically legitimized. What you've just heard is not a theory, it is documented history that has been hidden in plain sight. If we fail to confront the roots of our current system, we will repeat its darkest chapters, and this is not about Germany, this is about the world. The Hidden Reich is more than a book, it's a warning, it's a call to awareness and a tool for liberation. Please help spread this knowledge. Forward it to well-known influencers like Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Stu Peters, Elon Musk. Share the chapters, talk about the content, question the narratives we've been taught. And you can order this full English book worldwide and support this independent work at bodo-buch.de. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it very much. And for standing on the side of the truth. Please help to spread these words. May God protect us all. Yours, Bodo.